Alright, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup and working on the AN lines that go from the tank over to the frame rail. So I'll end up running hard line all along the frame. But right here I'm working on the AN line, soft lines that are going to go from the tank over. This one's a vent, and so I don't need to do anything here. It'll just be rubber hose. But then I got the supply and return, and those need to go over. What I'm ended up doing, so this is a -8, and then what I'm running for everything's -6, and so there's a 90, and then immediately goes into a reducer, and then I got a coupling here that just goes to the soft line, and then a 90 over to the frame rail. So what I'm going for is something like this, where I'll be able to come over the top of this cross member with this 90, and then this other 90 I'll be able to point towards the front of the cab and tie that into the frame, and that's where the hard line will hook into. So it's going to look like that on the other end. As far as measuring this, so I take these end cap pieces off. This is where you need that ferrule and the cap in order to lock the AN line in. And so I take those off in order to get the measurement right. So you end up having to butt that ferrule all the way up against the edge here, and so it sticks out a little bit. And if you try to just guess on where that measurement is, you might be too long or too short. So I just take that off and then put this where I want it to go. And so that measurement from here is a little under 13 inches. And so I'll cut it right at 13 in order to have just a little bit of extra, and then I curve over just like this one is. So I'll cut it right at 13. You could cut it with a cutoff wheel, but the rubber lining would get heated up, and so I'm going to end up using the bandsaw. And so you got to have a piece of tape, because the braided line on the outside will want to fray the second you cut this. And so I already measured this off for where I needed it to be and put a piece of tape here. And so you do want to get the tape, kind of middle-ish for wherever the cut's going to be. And so you see I already cut this one on this side, and the tape is keeping the side that I haven't worked with yet from fraying. And so don't take that off while you're working, just leave it on there. And so I'll go ahead and cut this piece that I need. So, the good thing about the bandsaw is it cuts real fast, and it'll get through that stainless steel outer side real easy, and then not heat up the middle piece and melt it or, cause any problems. So the next piece to do is a bit fiddly, and so you gotta try to clean out the inside a little bit. It'll have a bit of debris there. You'll expect that you're going to clog up your filter, this crap, but whatever. I'll just do both sides while I'm here. And this is just trying to square up and get any little loose pieces away. And then you just do one side at a time. You definitely don't take the tape off on both sides. So you got to put this on first. That just goes over the top. And then as soon as you take this off, it's going to want to fray, but it needs to be separated from the rubber on the inside anyway. So you'll see, as soon as I take that off, you know, it's already trying to fray. But you do need to make a little bit of room for the ferrule to go in. So you just take a small screwdriver and just move the braid away from the hose. And you don't need to push real hard, you're just sort of barely moving it just to get the wire away from the inner liner. Then you don't want to have any of the wire getting in between the ferrule and the liner itself, because that'll end up gouging when you use that compression fitting there. If there's a piece of wire in between the ferrule and the liner, then that'll end up causing a leak later. So just push that away all around. Okay. And then the ferrule has sort of like a cone piece on one side and then a flat shoulder on the other. So the cone piece goes towards the fitting like this. Okay, and then that has to get pushed all the way flush with the hose on the inside. If you have that same small screwdriver, to keep it in a line, you could do something like this, and then just heave-ho it on. And if you just sort of hold your wrist tight, you can put it in between your legs and, like a thigh master, crush that on there. And you do have to get it all the way flush, so there is a little shoulder on the inside of this, and the liner has to be all the way flush with that. Alright, so now we got to tighten this. This one goes here, and so this should slide in no problem. And so that's why you measure it from that post that was through there, because that's what it ends up sliding into. And so we got to tighten this up, and I'm sure people will cringe as I use just a regular crescent wrench. I ain't building no show car. So you got to clamp this in place, and with this coupler one, you know, these are the same width, so you have clamped both of those together. But you do need to give yourself enough room to make sure you can tighten it down all the way, so you don't want to overlap the vice grip jaws, the vice jaws, too far, because it does need to tighten all the way. So if you see, like, it does stick out from the vice jaws slightly, because it needs to seat all the way. And then you are supposed to lube the threads. I just got some regular oil here, nothing fancy. You can use whatever oil you got laying around, doesn't matter. And then just get that started. said, I don't really care. I mean, they got fancy AN wrenches that are aluminum and they won't scratch it and blah blah blah, but I don't care. Little scratch on these fittings ain't gonna bother me none. And then it does need to seat all the way. You'll feel it when it's turning. It'll go from like spinning to getting real tight. Like right here, it ain't gonna go anymore. And then that has to seat all the way on there. And so that's it. So not too bad. I mean, you know, you see I just put that together in just a few minutes. So as far as doing AN line for fuel system or whatever, no big deal. All right, thanks. See you in the next one.